10 out of 10 for this couple's shamelessness. Stealing her older sister's boyfriend and then crying saying, we didn't do it intentionally, love just happened. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? But wait, let's pause here for a moment. The most bitter part of this story isn't when Arya discovers the truth. The most heartbreaking moment was when Marcus, disillusioned, texted begging for forgiveness. And Caroline's sister sobbed as she admitted that she had deceived everyone simply because she was afraid of being alone. A cruel game of chess where both deceivers end up empty-handed, and Arya, she had managed to crush all feelings of pity, becoming a proud artist untouchable by anyone. Laughing at others today can lead to losing everything tomorrow. That's a perfect example.
And so, Arya Vale returns, a specter to haunt the very vipers who thought her buried. Just 3 weeks have passed since her lover publicly shattered her world for her own sister. That was meant to be the end of her story, but the narrative has been rewritten. At her side is Luca Devereux, a name that invokes a chill in this opulent crowd. This is not a collapse. This is the overture to a war. That 4-ton chandelier, a crystalline beast worth more than most homes, once served as her backdrop. Back when Arya was little more than Marcus's pretty accessory, a silent audience to men's talk. But that girl has vanished. Tonight, that same light feels different, revealing the fragility in every false smile. And there she is, at the crest of the staircase, her hand upon the arm of Luca Devereux himself. She is not clinging to him. Her stance is a study in deliberate power. Luca's voice is a soft directive, not an embrace. Breathe. You appear invincible. I have done nothing, she replies. Precisely. That is the entire point. Below them, the party is a gilded swamp of old money, and in its depths is Marcus, the architect of her agony. She can feel his stare on her, a violation from the shadows, her sister's cruel words echo in her mind. He was never truly yours. You can see her jaw set like stone. Control the tale your body is screaming, Luca advises, his gaze sweeping the room like a raptor hunting prey. They will sense the tension and smell weakness. I am not tense. My lady, I can feel your tremor. She draws a sharp breath, annoyed by his correctness, and wills her shoulders to drop. He moves, and she descends with him, a flawless entry into the lion's den. Everyone stops, everyone stares. Luca Devereux does not just enter a room, he commands it. 6'3" of pure threat in a suit that costs a fortune. A man who dismantles empires by phone. And for some unknowable reason, tonight, he chose her as his companion. As they reach the floor, a waiter appears with champagne. Luca takes 2 glasses, handing one to her without pause. You don't need to drink it, he says. It is a prop. It will keep your hands occupied. I know its purpose. Do you? Really? Her sharp glance is met with the barest hint of a smirk. There, he murmurs, nodding almost imperceptibly. 11 o'clock. Marcus sees you. Her heart hammers against her ribs. She holds her breath before asking, And he looks like a man who just witnessed his entire fortune burn. It is only then that she turns. Marcus is motionless by the bar, lost in a conversation he no longer hears. His gaze is fixed on her, a champagne flute paused on its journey to his lips. His expression a mask of shock sliding into pure dread. Sufficient, Arya whispers, looking away before he can compose himself, her eyes brushing past him as if he were furniture. How are you? Luca asks. Like I might be sick. That is to be expected. Is it? You're attempting to incinerate 3 years of history in one night. I would be concerned if you felt anything less. They move deeper into the gathering, the crowd parting for them like water. A woman in emerald green startles upon seeing her, immediately whispering to her friend, An older couple gives Luca a nod while their eyes steal glances at Arya. She recognizes some of them, Marcus's associates, the ones who silently watched her public execution. Smile, Arya, Luca says quietly. I am. No, you are baring your teeth. There is a distinction. Arya forces the tension from her face, adopting an expression of bored elegance. Better? Luca confirms. Now, we let them approach us. He guides her toward a group near the windows, people who wear their net worth like armor. Arya doesn't recognize them by name, only by type. Marcus once called them the core, the unofficial jury of their social circle. Luca, one man says, shaking his hand. I didn't think we'd see you. Robert. Luca's grip is brief. I rarely attend charity functions, but I was convinced. Robert's gaze drifts to Arya. I see the persuasion. This is Arya Vale, Luca states, his voice leaving no room for questions. She is not my +1. She is not my guest. Arya extends her hand. As Robert takes it, you can see his mind racing to recategorize her. A pleasure, he lies. A blonde woman of about 50 with the eyes of a shark leans forward. Arya Vale. Why does that name ring a bell? A cold dread washes through Arya's stomach. She is a photographer, Luca inserts, his voice like silk. Mainly editorials. You have likely seen her work in Vogue or Harper's. The lie is so grand, so audacious, it is almost a work of art. Her real career is a world away. But the woman simply nods in feigned recognition. The topic shifts to mergers, to yachts in Monaco. Arya stands beside him, playing her role with subtle nods and ghost-like smiles, a beautiful silent enigma. Her quiet, she understands, is creating a void they are desperate to fill with speculation. After 10 minutes, Luca ends the discussion. They retreat to the room's less crowded edge. You did well, he says. I said almost nothing. Exactly. You allowed them to write a story for you. That is how influence works. Arya finally tastes the champagne. It is flavored with wealth and regret. I still don't understand the strategy. It works by repeating the act. That is no explanation. Luca halts, facing her directly for the first time, his expression unreadable save for his piercing eyes. Do you want the unvarnished analysis? He asks. Yes. I cease to care for their opinions the moment I realized they are all terrified of being irrelevant. Once you truly grasp that, he continues, everything else is merely performance. Arya can only stare. That is a very bleak worldview. It is the real one. Before she can reply, a voice from her recent nightmares cuts through the ambiance. Arya! She turns. It is Marcus. He stands a few feet away, his hands in his pockets in a poor attempt at ease. Up close, he seems older, somehow frayed. His hair is shorter, his jaw is tense, and there are lines around his eyes she had never seen, or had simply refused to. Marcus, she says. The name is flat, cold, delivered to a stranger. He looks from Luca back to her. Can we talk? We are talking. Alone. The single word is from Luca, a figure of pure intimidation. Arya feels a spike of fear but keeps her expression placid. I do not think so. A muscle twitches in Marcus's jaw. Arya, I am begging you. No. The word is a sharp, final sound in the air. Marcus flinches. I just want to... I have already said no. He stares at her, his entire confident persona crumbling to reveal the desperate, confused man beneath. He has been denied his scene. She owes him nothing. Enjoy the party, Arya says, and turns her back on him completely. Luca moves to her side. As they walk toward the terrace, not once looking back, inside, Marcus is left stranded, scorched by the heat of 100 judging glares. But out on the balcony, the air is clean and cool. Arya leans against the stone balustrade with her eyes closed, embracing the quiet. That, Luca remarks, was a clinical execution. The victory feels strangely hollow. Feelings were not the objective, only the strategy was. She opens her eyes to the city lights unfurled below. He looked small. She nods slowly. Perfect, Luca says. Let that feeling resonate. Silence settles between them, a profound shift from the party's muffled hum. Out here, there is only them and the pulse of the city. May I ask you something? Arya ventured. You may. What is your purpose in engineering all of this? Luca paused for a long moment. He moved to stand by the railing, his body's warmth a near presence. Because I am familiar with the feeling, he finally said, of being utterly misconstrued, of being made the villain in another person's narrative for their own comfort. And I do not believe such attacks should go unanswered. Arya watched him, her gaze sharpening. Beneath the immaculate suit and the rigid control, she sensed something broken, something feral. She could not name it, but she could feel it. Thank you, she said. He gave her a sideways glance. Do not thank me yet. The main act has not begun. What could he possibly mean by that? He pushed away from the railing, adjusting his cufflinks. Your sister is in the building. Arya felt the air stolen from her lungs. By the main doors, Luca noted, his voice devoid of emotion as he surveyed the room. She has not seen you yet. Arya's knuckles grew white against the stone. I don't think I can do this. You can. You cannot know that. Luca turned, his eyes locking with hers, intense and absolute. I watched you face down men whose job it is to find a person's breaking point. I saw you dismiss the man who engineered your public humiliation. You can do this. Arya swallowed hard. What if I fall apart? Then you fall apart later. This performance required a delicate touch. Her arrival was an open flame. A slight tremor of her head became a confident signal. He understood. Together they walked into the glare. Beside a cascade of champagne stood Caroline, captivating a man in a slate-gray suit. She was a vision in a rose-tinted gown, her hair immaculate, pearls at her throat, an image from a life that was almost hers. An iron band tightened around Arya's chest. Breathe. Luca's voice was a low whisper. She obeyed. They moved with a chilling grace, giving Caroline a perfect line of sight. And then, it happened. A sweeping glance, a point of contact, a sudden halt. In that single beat, the earth stood still. Caroline's smile fractured. A hairline crack only Arya could see. Luca's stride never wavered, and Arya mirrored his unreadable calm. They came within 10 feet of Caroline, a calculated range for unmistakable recognition of the man on Arya's arm. A small parting of her lips, as if a sound died in her throat. Arya offered a cool, spectral hint of a smile and glided past. In their wake, Caroline was a statue, the crystal in her hand beginning to tremble. Nearing the dance floor, Luca inclined his head. How are you? Unsteady. You hide it well. Good. The strings began to swell with a waltz. Dancers flowed onto the floor in a sea of perfect synchrony. Luca offered his hand. Dance with me. Arya stopped cold. I can't dance. Neither can I. It's of no consequence. She placed her hand in his. He drew her onto the floor, one hand finding her waist, the other holding hers with an unexpected lightness. Their first steps were hesitant and slow, out of sync with the music but perfectly in time with each other. "We are the spectacle," Arya murmured. "Let them stare." Her gaze shifted past his shoulder. Marcus at the bar, his jaw a knot of tension, his eyes fixed on them. Caroline remained paralyzed at the entrance, her companion forgotten, her focus unbroken. And for the first time in 3 weeks, Arya wasn't a tragedy, she was a reckoning. "You're smiling," Luca noted. "Am I?" "Yes, a genuine one." Arya met his gaze. It was deep and unreadable, yet held a spark of warmth that felt like recognition. "Thank you," she said once more. "You keep saying that." "Because I mean it." The music ceased. A soft wave of applause washed over them. Luca released her slowly, the air between them suddenly felt fast. "Come," he said. "We need to breathe." They navigated the crowd to a secluded balcony overlooking the gardens where the music became a distant pulse. The night air was crisp and dark. Arya gripped the railing, arching her back to face the sky. No stars, only the city's orange haze blotting out the night. "I'm waiting for the collapse," she confessed. "Of what? The rage, the breakdown. Seeing them should have destroyed me, but I feel nothing." "Is that so terrible?" She considered the question. "I don't know." Luca paused, his silence stretching before he spoke. "Perhaps the war is simply over. Maybe that is the reason you are here, or I am simply numb, or you are more resilient than you believe." Arya turned toward him. "You know nothing about me. I know enough." "Such as?" His gaze held hers. "I know you could have stayed hidden tonight and handed them their win. But you came. That is not numbness, Arya. That is a raised middle finger." She wanted to refute it, to insist he was wrong, that her composure was a lie and she was splintering within. But the words were caught in her throat. What if he was right? What if this was her? The door behind them opened. A laughing couple saw them and quickly retreated inside. Luca glanced at his watch. "We have been here 2 hours. It's sufficient." So soon, the statement has been delivered. Lingering now would only dilute its impact. Arya nodded slowly, deliberately. Understood. They re-entered the throng, making a final sweeping pass through the ballroom, ensuring their departure was noted. Marcus watched them leave. Caroline watched them leave. No words passed between them, and Arya never looked back. The car was waiting, a black sedan that seemed poured from shadow. The driver opened her door silently, she got in, and Luca followed. The door closed with a heavy finality. The world fell silent. Arya released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You did well," Luca said. "I did. What do you feel at this moment? Shattered? Electric?" "I cannot tell. Perhaps just hollow. That is to be expected." The car slipped from the curb, a blade cutting through the city's arteries. The party's glow receded in the distance. Arya watched the world blur past her window. What is the next step? You go home, you tend to your wounds, and tomorrow you rise and continue. Is that all? That is all. She faced him. And your role in this? My role? Why did you truly do this for me? For a moment, Luca was utterly still, his eyes focused on some distant point. "I told you, I dislike seeing anyone underestimated. That is not the complete truth." "No," he conceded, "it is not. Will you tell me the rest?" He met her eyes then. his gaze sharp and direct, and for an instant the facade cracked. Just barely, just enough. Perhaps one day, he said, but not this evening. The car halted before her building. The driver opened her door. Arya stepped out and then hesitated. Luca. Yes, I meant it. Thank you. He gave one curt nod. Get some sleep, Arya. The door clicked. The car departed, and Arya stood on the sidewalk alone in the deepening gloom, but she was no longer broken. She felt like someone who had just witnessed her own burial and then simply walked away from the grave. Her apartment was unchanged, cramped, cluttered, and scented with old coffee and a lavender candle. She let her clutch fall on the counter, slipped it off her heels, and stood in the darkness, absorbing the fridge's hum and the city's faint heartbeat. Her phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. You were magnificent tonight. Rest well. L. She gazed at the screen, then set the phone face down. Her hands were trembling, not from fright, but from its utter absence. A surge of adrenaline, or the stark, cold jolt of liberation. She had done it. She entered that room, faced them both, and emerged whole. So why did it feel like she was about to splinter into 1,000 pieces? Arya flicked on a light, poured some water, took a sip, and slammed the glass onto the counter. The noise reverberated through the still apartment. She pressed her hands flat at the cold countertop, shut her eyes tightly, and attempted the breathing Luca had shown her. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. It was useless. The tears erupted anyway, hot and sudden and fierce. They were not tears of sorrow or of rage. They were the kind that break free when you have held yourself together so long your own body rebels against the strain. She sank to the kitchen floor, her back to the cabinets, and let it consume her. 10 minutes, perhaps 15. She lost all time. When it ended, she felt scoured clean, emptied out, as if a long-held poison had finally been expelled. Arya wiped her face on her sleeve, rose, and went to bed. Sleep was immediate and dreamless. The morning was too bright, too sudden. Sunlight cut through the blinds while her phone screamed like a trapped insect. She squinted, fumbling for it. 12 missed calls, 23 text messages. A knot of ice tightened in her stomach. Most were from acquaintances, former colleagues, someone from a forgotten art opening. The notes were all the same. Saw you, you were stunning. Who was he? Give us the details. But a single message stood apart. Her mother. We must talk. Call me. Arya let the phone drop, her gaze fixed on the ceiling. Her mother. This confrontation was preordained. Carolyn would have called her the moment they left, weaving a tale of victimhood with herself as the martyr. She was in no state for this, but the phone buzzed again, her mother's name illuminating the screen. A sigh. Arya finally pushed herself up and answered. Mom. Arya. Her mother's voice was strained, wrapped in that false serenity that always signaled disapproval. I've been trying to reach you. I was asleep. At 11 a.m. It was a long night. A weighted silence followed. Then, Caroline spoke to me. I imagined she would. Arya's tone was flat, exhausted. Oh, what was her account? She said you attended the Whitmore Gala with Luca Devereaux. That is correct. And you did not think to inform me? Arya rested her head back. What purpose would that have served? Because, her mother began, aghast. Arya, do you know who that man is? Yes. He is dangerous. He is a man of business. He has no mercy. People who oppose him have a way of vanishing. A short, harsh laugh escaped Arya. And Marcus, what is your term for what he did? A chasm of silence on the line. Mom? Arya said, her voice softening slightly. I cannot do this right now. Caroline is concerned for you. Caroline can be concerned with herself. Arya, I must go. She disconnected before Arya could answer, who then powered the phone off and let it fall. A tightness seized her chest. It was not grief, but something far more volatile. Perhaps it was rage, or simply the crushing burden of managing the emotions of others while she was quietly disintegrating. She got up, showered, and started the coffee. The caustic brew, dark and potent, silenced the storm of emotion, leaving a cold, calculated clarity in its wake. Her usual tasks felt alien as the siren call of her inbox beckoned. A message from Elaine Cortez at Prestige, a prominent editor, cut through the noise with a single subject. Opportunity. An unseen force guided her hand to open it. The email's sterile corporate courtesy created a jarring dissonance. She read it 3 times, unable to reconcile this sudden offer from a magazine that had previously dismissed her. Her career trajectory offered no logic for this abrupt ascent. Only one person could orchestrate such a reversal. Him. A quick search confirmed it. Luca was the chief executive officer of Devereux Holdings, his name on a litany of powerful boards. The search exposed the intricate web of his power. His company had acquired a controlling interest 6 months prior. This was not an opportunity, it was a maneuver. The realization settled in her gut, a toxic mixture of rage and indebtedness. Then Luca's text appeared. Lunch, 1 p.m., sending a car. Less an invitation than a summons. Her instinct was to refuse, but this was not the first time she stood to gain from his influence. Her reply was a single word. Yes. The car that materialized at 12:45 was a sterile phantom, a stark contrast to their last ride. The driver's unyielding silence hammered home the transactional nature of the meeting. The 20-minute journey ended in an unfamiliar, old-world corner of the city. They stopped before a building marked only by a number. The driver opening her door was the final, unspoken command. The chauffeur's statement was blunt. Mr. Devereux is waiting. Inside, the establishment was dim, and Luca occupied the most strategic position, a rear table commanding a view of the entrance. She confronted him immediately about the job. He brushed it aside as a simple introduction. When she challenged him on owning the company, he deflected with a polished evasion. He had a stake in the parent company, a phrase engineered to minimize his absolute control. His question was cold and detached. Are you angry? She was not mad, only disoriented. He immediately began reshaping the narrative, claiming he merely guided an editor to her portfolio, and her talented the rest. The validation was swiftly undercut by a sharp critique. Your website is outdated, then bolstered by the assertion that her talent was better than good. It was a perfectly measured blend of encouragement and poison. Lucas seized control of the interaction, ordering for them both without consultation. He sidestepped her questions about his motives by launching into a tragic story meant to forge an artificial bond. He spoke of an engagement 5 years ago to a woman, Isabel, who abandoned him 2 weeks before the wedding for his business partner, a man he had treated like a brother for 10 years. He waved away her sympathy, recasting this ultimate betrayal as the very event that forged his power. It was a lesson, he said, that loyalty is a meaningless word until tested by immense pressure. The ones who do not break, he concluded, are priceless. And you think I'm one of them? She asked. I think you have the potential to be, he replied, his words feeling like a trial. When the food arrived, her appetite had evaporated. When she asked if he regretted such openness, he corrected her. The error was never trusting, it was trusting the wrong person. He professed the entire catastrophe, rebuilt his worldview. He no longer waits to be noticed. He compels people to notice him. He confirmed this new approach was proving highly effective. He would rather be feared than pitied, he said, before amending fear to respect, claiming the former was simply the most efficient route to the latter. She confessed her own fear was of becoming hard, cold, untouchable. His comfort was a precise psychological game. Her ability to admit that fear was proof she would never succumb to it. The people who truly turn to ice, he said, can no longer feel their own cold. After they had eaten, she informed him that her ex-fiancé, Marcus, had tried to make contact. Luca's expression became an impassive mask. He inquired if she had replied. She had not. Good, he said. He then dissected the psychology of the matter. Severing a 3-year tie is a protracted war, and responding is to surrender valuable mental real estate that he no longer deserves. Her question, what if he wants to apologize, was met with a clinical counter-strike. Do you want him back? He asked, completely sidestepping her query. No. Then what he wants is irrelevant. The stark logic triggered a traumatic memory, a family dinner with the 4 of them, her, Marcus, and the other woman, Carolyn. A harmless comment from her mother about future grandchildren had made Marcus freeze completely. In that instant, she recounted, I knew. The betrayal was not revealed in a grand confession, but in a minuscule tell. His eyes darted not to her, but to Caroline. His excuses later were a predictable collection of cliches. It was something that just happened, as if he lacked all agency. Both he and Caroline claimed they couldn't help how they felt. The affair had gone on for 6 months. Her own judgment was merciless. I'm an idiot! Luca intervened, reframing her conclusion. He argued it was not a failure of intellect, but a poor investment of her trust. Leaning in, his voice low and intense, he commanded her attention. Listen to me. His assessment was precise. Their betrayal was a symptom of their own flawed characters, and it had no bearing on her value. You miss the signs because you are not built that way, which is a good thing. A knot formed in Arya's throat. It doesn't feel like a good thing. It will, he promised. An hour later, they departed. Luca dismissed the waiting car. Walk with me. They meandered down quiet, tree-lined streets. The sharp click of Arya's heels was the only sound. She had worn the wrong shoes. After a long silence, Luca spoke. Tell me something. Like what? A truth you've never told anyone. Arya considered this. I'm afraid. Of what? That I'll wake up one day and find that nothing has changed, that I will be right back where I started. He stopped walking, turning to face her in fading daylight. That cannot happen now. How are you so sure? I am sure because the fear itself is proof you are already changing. People who regress do so without awareness. They simply fall into old patterns. You are aware of the danger. That is the difference. Arya struggled to believe him. It felt too much like hope, which invariably led to pain. They resumed walking as the sun cast long, ominous shadows. Can I ask a question? Arya began. Go ahead. What is your stake in all this? In my recovery? Luca paused briefly, his voice softer. I get to observe a person's true self emerge, not the version imposed by society. An event like that, he continued, is a phenomenon so rare it is worth studying. Arya had no response to that, so she remained silent. They walked until dusk fell, at which point Luca finally summoned the car. "I will see you soon," he said as she got in. When the time is right." The car pulled away, his form shrinking in the rear window before vanishing. Later that night, she broke her own rule and listened to the voicemail from Marcus. His voice was a shaky, pathetic ghost of its former self. "Arya, it's me. I do not know if you will get this, but I had to try. I saw you last night, and I need you to know I am so sorry." The ex-fiancé's voicemail was a pathetic appeal, full of talk of cowardice and how she deserved better. Arya, however, was beyond it. With clinical detachment, she deleted the recording and blocked his number. A clean break. Then, seizing the moment, she dispatched an email to Elaine Cortez, cementing the new assignment before doubt could intervene. Almost instantly, her phone vibrated. It was a text from Luca, the architect of her current reality. "I'm proud of you," she texted back. "How did you know?" He replied with an enigmatic claim, "Because I know you." Arya contemplated the fine line between a mentor and a manipulator. Yet she was no longer drowning, and that was a victory. The call with Elaine Cortez was set for 2 days later. Arya was at her desk, notebook poised, affecting an air of complete composure when the phone rang. "Arya, thank you for your time." "Of course, thanks for the call." Elaine's voice was all business, devoid of pleasantries. "We're running a 12-page feature on leading women in unconventional fields. I need a photographer who can capture vulnerability as a superpower. Your portfolio indicates that is you." Arya's hand tightened around her pen. "I appreciate that." "The shoot is in 3 weeks, New York. We cover all travel. You get full creative control. I retain final say. The fee is $15,000. Is that acceptable?" $15,000. Arya's mind momentarily ceased to function. It was more money than she had ever received for a single project. "Yes," she said, her voice impossibly steady. "That works." "Excellent. Paperwork is on its way. Welcome aboard." The line went dead. Arya stared at her hands, which were shaking again, but this time the tremor felt like hope. She texted Luca, "I got the job." His reply was instant. "I know. Elaine called me afterward. Why?" "I told her to call. I had to ensure she would not waste your time." A bizarre wave of rage and relief washed over her, and she simply allowed it. "You have to stop this." "Stop what?" "Playing puppet master with my life." And so, Luca orchestrates a classic gambit, framing his control as her liberation. His entire presence weaves an illusion of choice, a textbook study in subtle domination. When he declares Arya's next step is her own, he is merely setting the lure. Her quiet "thank you" is the sound of her taking it, a sign of her growing reliance. But with a dismissive gesture, he voids the debt she feels. 3 pulsing dots precede his next maneuver. "Dinner tonight?" Arya's silence is a civil war raging in her mind. This exists in a space far beyond friendship, yet shy of something defined. For 2 hours, she agonized over her attire, wrestling with the role she was expected to inhabit. She settles on black trousers and a silk blouse, a uniform of neutrality, armor against interpretation. Luca arrives at 7 o'clock on the dot, a quiet assertion of his command over time itself. He waits in the vehicle, forcing her to enter his territory. She slides into the back seat beside him. His praise, "You look nice," is another carefully dispensed token of approval. Her reply, "You say that every time," reveals her awareness of the pattern even as she needs it. The 30-minute journey to a sterile, affluent suburb is a classic tactic designed to isolate her and amplify his influence. The avenues are broad, flanked by ancient trees and homes with sprawling porches. Their car halts before a small bistro nestled between a bookstore and a florist. Luca opens her door personally, then sends the driver away. "Let's go." Inside, the atmosphere is intimate and dim, with exposed brick and tasteful decor. The establishment is nearly deserted. A woman in her 60s simply acknowledges Luca with a nod, leading them to a secluded corner booth without a single word. "You come here often?" Arya inquires as they settle. "I used to, when I needed a place for my thoughts to settle. And now? Now it's where I bring those for whom I no longer need a mask." Arya, unsure how to process this, retreats behind the menu as they place their orders. Wine is brought for her, whiskey for him. The meal consists of small, elegant dishes, fare intended to facilitate conversation, not sate hunger. "Tell me about New York," Luca begins. "What of it?" "Are you nervous?" "I'm terrified." "Of what?" Arya sets down her fork. "Because this role could define my entire career. If I falter, it's not just a lost opportunity, it's proof I was never worthy." "That is a distorted perspective." "Is it? Everyone will just assume I got the position because of you." "Let them. The quality of your work will be your only rebuttal. And if my work isn't good enough?" Luca leans back, studying her. "You are aiming your fear at the wrong mark." "What should I fear?" "Nothing. Your focus must be on the work. All else is static." "That's simple for you to say." "You imagine any of this was simple for me?" Arya blinked. "Was it not?" "No. I have spent the last 10 years forging a reputation, a name that commands respect born from fear. It doesn't mean I'm good, it means I'm skilled at making others pause. You, however, possess genuine talent." "Perhaps. But I wasn't always this way. I made monumental errors. I lost fortunes. I lost men. And I lost years trying to justify my presence in rooms I was never invited into." "So where does that leave you now?" "I own those rooms now, but the feeling of being an imposter never truly fades. I've simply stopped caring about it." Arya absorbed his words. "What made you stop caring?" Lucas swirled the amber liquid in his glass, gazing into its depths as if it held an answer. "I stopped seeking permission. From financiers, from board members, from old men who mistook age for wisdom. I began to trust my own instinct, even when the world insisted I was wrong." "Did it succeed?" "Mostly. And when I failed spectacularly, I learned more from my own wreckage than they ever did from their cautious victories." Their main courses appeared. They ate in a measured silence, the conversation drifting toward safer shores. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a wave of calm settled over Arya. "May I ask something personal?" she ventured. "That is entirely contingent on the question." "Isabel?" she began. "What transpired after she departed?" Luca's expression didn't close off, it simply honed to a finer point. "What is it you wish to know?" "Did the two of you ever speak again?" "Once." A year later, she telephoned unexpectedly, claiming she needed to offer an apology. "And you?" "I allowed her to deliver her speech. Then I disconnected the call." "Was that truly the conclusion?" "It was. She was seeking closure. I was under no obligation to provide it." The specter of Marcus's unheard voicemail flickered in Arya's thoughts. Do you regret it? Regret not allowing her to complete her act of self-pity? No. Her call was never about remorse. It was a maneuver for absolution, an attempt to shed the weight of her choices, and he would not permit it. I would not grant her that peace, he stated. That seems severe. Perhaps, but it was the necessary decision. Their meal concluded. A waiter delivered coffee, unprompted, as the plates were taken away. Arya cupped her hands around the warm ceramic. I still recall that night, she confessed. The gala, the way you commanded that room was absolute. I want that. You already possess that power. No, I was merely playing a part. You were not. Arya, every person in that room is performing. My performance is simply more refined than most. That is a difficult truth to accept. Then you must learn, power is founded on two pillars, the perception others hold of you and the deceptions we tell ourselves. Arya's gaze grew more intense. The dim lighting seemed to lower his defenses, revealing a sliver of vulnerability. She noticed the faint lines of fatigue around his eyes, previously unseen. Does it not become exhausting? She inquired. What? The performance, the endless calculation, the entire charade. Luca fell silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was stripped of its usual authority. Always. Then why continue? Because to cease would be to concede that the last 10 years were sacrificed for a hollow version of a man I might not even recognize. And that is a truth I am not prepared to confront. His candor struck her with the force of a physical blow. She was utterly stunned. Luca finished the remainder of his whiskey. Let's leave. The air that greeted them outside was cool, carrying the first promise of autumn. The driver was present, but Luca waved him away once more. Care for a walk? He proposed. Yes. They began to move without a destination, passing the darkened facades of shops, the streetlights casting soft halos on the pavement. The only sound was the cadence of Arya's heels. Luca's hands were deep in his pockets. So what is the end game with your family? He eventually asked. Explain. Your mother, your sister, you cannot simply evade them indefinitely. Watch me. Arya. She let out a breath. I am divided. One part of me wants to march in and unleash chaos, and the other part wishes only to erase yourself from their existence. Both are understandable, but only one constitutes a strategy. And which is that? To disappear. My mother will align with Caroline. She invariably does. And Caroline will weave this into a grand tragedy where she is the long-suffering victim. And you will simply permit that narrative? What other choice do I have? Luca stopped abruptly, turning to face her. You have every choice. You can declare war, you can choose exile, or you can grant mercy. What you cannot do is allow them to author your story while you stand by. I don't know how to do that. You absolutely do. You did it at the gala. You entered that room and commanded the entire narrative by your very presence. That was a completely different scenario. How so? Because you were by my side. A subtle change occurred in Luca's posture. I am by your side now. A familiar knot of anxiety tightened in Arya's throat. She averted her gaze, fighting a sudden sting behind her eyes. I cannot build my foundation on you. And why is that? Because the moment you depart or tire of this, of me, I will shatter. That will not happen. You cannot know that. I can. I do not engage in half measures. I don't wager on people I believe will fold. Arya met his gaze. She perceived something raw in his eyes, a completely unguarded part of him that frightened her, not with a sense of danger, but with its profound sincerity. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Luca's response was impeccably controlled, each word a deliberate move. "I want you to stop apologizing for your own existence, to cease overanalyzing every move out of fear of error. I want you to trust in yourself with the same damn conviction I have in you." That is a monumental thing to ask. I'm aware. I am not certain I can do it. You are already doing it. You simply haven't learned to recognize it yet. They resumed walking. The space between them had shifted, now dense with unspoken thoughts. Arya's phone vibrated, a call she chose to ignore. It buzzed again. "You should probably answer that," Luca noted. She retrieved it. 2 messages from an unknown number. "It's Caroline. We need to talk. Please, I know you're angry, but we are sisters." Arya stared at the text, the familiar tightness constricting her chest. "What is it?" Luca inquired. "Carolyn." His jaw hardened. "What does she want?" "To talk." "And will you grant her that?" The question hung in the air, heavy with a lifetime of sisterhood and betrayals, memories of trust colliding with the recent image of Caroline's face, utterly defiant, the face of one who never bears the consequences. "No," Arya replied. "Are you certain?" "No, but it is the decision I'm making." With that, she blocked the number. With that, she ended the call. Luca offered no words, just a slow, profound nod of understanding. Their path had led them back to the restaurant, where the car waited like a shadow in repose. "I should go home," Arya murmured. "Right." A profound quiet enveloped them on the drive back. Through the window, Arya watched the city's soft edges harden into monuments of steel. He walked her to her door. "Thank you," she offered, "for tonight." "For all of it." "Stop saying that." A difficult habit to break. The faintest smile touched his lips. "Get your rest." "You still have to work. I'm aware." She turned to leave, but his voice held her. "Arya." She met his eyes. "You possess a strength you have yet to recognize." "Do not dare to forget it," he added. Speechless, she could only nod before slipping through the door. Inside, her apartment felt like a vast and hollow space. She flooded every room with light, prepared tea she would never drink, and sat on the couch, staring into the void. Her laptop was waiting on the table. She took it, navigated to her email, and began to write. "Mother, I'm aware Caroline contacted you, and I understand my response seems drastic, but you must see this. It was not merely a betrayal, it was a choice. Over 6 months, they chose one another over me, time after time. I am not asking you to pick a side. I am informing you that I can no longer exist in this charade. I require separation from them both, and possibly from you. I'm not yet certain. My intention isn't to wound you, it is to ensure my own survival. And I cannot survive by pretending this is acceptable. I hope you understand, but if you cannot, that is another consequence I must face. Arya." She read the words 3 times, then erased the entire draft. Some wars were not meant for this night. Instead, she created a new file and began to construct the New York project. Lighting grids, shot compositions, and interview questions. She worked until 2 a.m., when sheer physical exhaustion finally silenced the chaos in her mind and granted her sleep. The following 3 weeks were an unbroken monolith of relentless work. Her world shrank to contracts, strategic planning, and deep research. Labor became her fortress. Luca's texts arrived like quiet pings, small and asking nothing. How is preparation? Make sure you're eating. You are going to master this. Arya saved each one, refusing to question why. 2 days before her departure for New York, her mother called. Arya paused, then accepted the call. Mom. Arya. The tension in her mother's voice was a strained wire. We must talk. I don't believe we do. Please, I only ask that you listen. Arya sat upon her bed, braced for what was to come. I'm listening. Her mother's breath was unsteady. Caroline told me everything about Marcus and for how long. I didn't know, Arya. I swear to you, I was completely unaware. Would your knowledge have made a difference? Of course it would have. Really. For the past 3 weeks, your only action was to defend her. I was not defending her. I was trying to stop this family from self-destructing. It already has, Mom. You were simply not there to witness the detonation. A silence stretched. I am so sorry. Her mother finally whispered. I'm sorry I was so blind, that I failed to ask the right questions. I am so sorry that I made you feel you had to endure this alone. That familiar tightness seized Arya's throat. I don't know what you want me to say to that. I want nothing. I only need you to know that I understand now. What they did. What I did in failing you. Okay. I heard you. I can't say if it changes a thing, but I heard you. A long silence emanated from her mother's end. Will you come for Thanksgiving? I don't know. Will you think about it? Maybe. That is all I can ask. The call concluded. Arya sat perfectly still, trying to identify this unfamiliar new emotion. Her feelings were a perfect stalemate. No territory won, no territory lost. This internal ceasefire was its own form of victory. The day before her flight, she was summoned to Luca's office, a place she had never seen. She imagined a sterile steel box built for intimidation. The reality was profoundly different. The building was old, its character honored by a modern remodel with exposed brick walls and immense windows that bathed the space in light. His office encompassed the entire penthouse floor, a quiet zone of absolute power filled with books and files that spoke of tangible work. He was on a call when she entered, gesturing to a chair before he concluded. You made it, he said. You told me to come. I did. He retrieved an envelope from a drawer and slid it across the desk. New York, Arya breathed, opening it. Inside was a check for $20,000. Her head jerked up. What in the hell is this? It is a retainer. Elaine already paid me. That was for your time, he corrected. This is for support. Clothes, new equipment, anything necessary to ensure there are no last-minute failures. I cannot take this. You can, he countered, and you will. Luca. Arya, do not argue with me on this. Your camera is 5 years old. Your lenses are scratched. Your talent has been compensating, but it should no longer have to. Not like this. Her eyes were locked on the amount. I will pay it back. No, you will not. I'm giving you my word that I will. Fine, he relented. Repay me by creating something so extraordinary that no one even recalls my involvement. Arya folded the check with precision and slipped it back into the envelope. Thank you. Don't thank me. I will not. A true smile broke through his professional facade, altering his entire countenance. The guarded executive vanished, revealing a younger man. You are a complicated woman, he remarked, and you are a complicated man. A comfortable silence settled over them, something entirely new between them. Are you ready? Luca asked. For New York? For everything? Arya reflected on the past month, the gala, the commission, the agonizing process of shedding an old self for one she was only just beginning to know. I don't know, she admitted, but I'm going regardless. Good, he said. That is all that matters. As Arya was about to leave, Luca's voice stopped her. Arya! She turned back. You are going to be legendary, he told her. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, especially not yourself. Too stunned to speak, she could only nod before she departed. The following morning, she was ascending toward New York with new equipment, a secure contract, and a wild, unnameable feeling stirring within her. It felt like the prelude to something immense, or perhaps the grand finale. Either way, she was prepared. New York was a complete sensory assault, a storm of noise, speed, and a relentless current of humanity. She had been here before, but never for a task of this magnitude. The Midtown residence Elaine had arranged was a sleek, impersonal tower for people in transit. Arya collected her keys, hauled her equipment to the 11th floor, and then froze, overcome by the sheer weight of her recent choices. Her phone buzzed. It was Luca. Did you land safely? Yes, she texted back. I'm in the room. Nervous? I am absolutely terrified. Good, he responded. That means you're not a machine. A ghost of a smirk nearly touched her lips, but vanished. The assignment would begin tomorrow. 8 subjects in 3 days, each chosen by Elaine. Arya spent the night immersed in her notes, checking gear she already knew intimately. A ferocious hunger began to consume her, a physical symptom of a much deeper exhaustion. Room service delivered a tray of profound sadness, a wilted salad and a sandwich that tasted of cardboard, most of which she ignored. Sleep was a ghost. She lay staring at the ceiling as the city's symphony of chaos, sirens, angry horns, the spectral arguments of strangers seeped through the glass. At 2 a.m, she gave in, grabbing her camera like a shield and stepping out into the madness of the night. The city's pulse had changed. The daytime frenzy had subsided into a low, dangerous hum. Arya walked the streets until her body failed her, capturing images that spoke to her. A shadow seeking warmth over a subway vent, a brutal slash of paint across a metal door. She found beauty where neon lights bled onto the wet pavement. It was nearly 4 when she finally retreated. She washed the night from her skin, dressed, and stood by the window, watching the sky transition from black to gray to a whisper of blue. Her phone shattered the calm at 6:30. Elaine, are you active? I am. Good. The location is downtown. A car will be there at 7:30. Your 9 o'clock is first. I will be ready. I know you will. See you there. S. The line went dead. Arya gazed at her reflection. She was a phantom, overstimulated and exhausted, operating on nothing but nerve and will. That would have to be enough. The studio was a vast, industrial temple in Brooklyn, made of sleek concrete and raw steel. Elaine stood guard at the entrance, a woman in her 50s with the eyes of a predator, dressed completely in black, as if for an art opening or a burial. Perhaps both. Arya, A pleasure to finally meet you, she said. Her handshake was not a greeting. It was a swift, cold assessment. Luca believes you are the genuine article, Elaine noted. He is biased. Perhaps, but his intuition is rarely mistaken. She gestured to the enormous space. This is your arena. I will leave you to your process. Your first subject is Maya Chen, a tech prodigy. She built an empire from nothing and was just named to Forbes 30 under 30. She is a fortress, and she despises the spotlight. You will have to dig deep. Understood. Then Elaine was simply gone. For the next hour, Arya became a master of light, adjusting stands and tweaking diffusers, searching for that perfect, fragile balance. Maya arrived at 9 precisely, a woman barely in her mid-20s wearing a suit that radiated more wealth than Arya had ever seen. Her expression was a practiced fortress of polite distance, a facade built across countless interviews to shield her true self. Maya, thank you for coming. Of course. Her handshake was brief, all professional economy. Where would you like me? Arya guided her to a single chair near the window where the daylight was softened by thin drapes. Here is fine. We'll begin simply and follow where the conversation leads. Maya settled, composing her body into an attitude of perfect control. Arya raised her camera, taking a few preliminary shots. Maya's smile was flawless, a hollow echo of warmth designed for print. May I ask you something? Arya said, lowering the camera. The smile remained fixed. You may. Why did you agree to this? For an instant, the carefully built shield faltered. I don't think I follow. You have no need for this publicity. You're on the Forbes list. You have powerful investors. Why consent to a piece about redefining success? A moment of silence thickened the air before a laugh escaped Maya. It was clipped and surprisingly genuine. You're quite direct. I lack the time for anything else. A fair point. Maya shifted, her posture softening, and the first fracture appeared in her corporate facade. My public relations team felt it was a strategic move, an opportunity to reveal my, quote, human side. And does one exist? A human side? I'm not certain anymore. On most days, it feels like a commodity I traded away to launch the company. Arya brought the camera up once more. Tell me about the price you paid. Maya's face transformed, not hardening, but clouding over with a profound doubt. I haven't slept more than 4 hours a night in 3 years. I can't recall the last time I visited my parents. The livelihoods of 200 people rest on my shoulders, and most days I'm merely guessing, hoping I don't steer it all into ruin. Click! The shutter captured the precise second her vulnerability broke through. And yet you continue, Arya observed. I continue. Why? Because I am terrified that if I stop, I will not recognize the person who is left. Click, another frame. Maya's eyes were sharp, yet adrift. For an hour, Arya worked, carefully peeling away the layers of the persona to find the woman buried beneath the chief executive officer. By the end, Maya's jacket was discarded. Her hair was in disarray, and her expression was open in a way it had not been when she arrived. Thank you, Maya said, preparing to leave. That was unusual. A good unusual? I believe so. The pictures will tell the story. The day followed a repeating pattern, a new subject, the same guarded heart. There was a single mother who launched a charity from her kitchen, a fallen athlete who lost everything before becoming a mentor, A writer who saw her first book published at 50 after a lifetime of rejections. Each session began with a wall. Every person bore a hidden weight, and each one in time allowed Arya to see it. The final subject departed after 8 p.m. Arya's back ached and her eyes stung, yet she felt more present than she had in months. As Arya packed her equipment, Elaine materialized from the shadows. Your assessment? Promising, I believe. I'll need to view them on a proper monitor to be certain. I require the unedited files before morning. No alterations. Arya gave a curt nod. Understood. You performed well today. I wasn't entirely convinced you possessed the necessary instinct. I appreciate the 5-star endorsement. The faintest hint of a smile touched Elaine's lips. I operate on instinct, not confidence, and my instinct suggests Luca's judgment of you was sound. She turned and was gone before Arya could formulate a reply. With her equipment secured, Arya took a cab back to the artificial calm of her hotel. Her phone showed 6 missed calls, a trio from an unknown number, 2 from her mother, and 1 from Luca. She returned his call first. How was your first day? He asked. It was harrowing, exhausting. I think it was a great success. That's precisely how I imagined it would be. Elaine is already demanding the raw files by dawn. That is her method. Don't allow it to affect you. That warning comes a bit late. Luca's laugh was an unexpected burst of warmth through the phone. You will endure, Arya. Trust your intuition. I'm trying to. I know, and for that reason I am not concerned. For the next 20 minutes they spoke, touching upon matters both profound and trivial, and the strange paradox of New York, a metropolis that can make you feel both monumental and utterly invisible. His voice was a steadying presence that lingered long after the call ended. The following 2 days became a whirlwind of faces and revelations, conversations that began with polite fictions and concluded in raw, unguarded truth, with Arya's camera capturing the fragile space between thought and expression. On the 3rd day, Elaine sat beside her, the laptop's glow reflecting in her glasses as she clinically dissected the raw images. The quiet was absolute, punctuated only by the click of the trackpad and the scratch of her pen on a notepad. At last her gaze shifted to meet Arya's. These are adequate. Merely adequate? They are exceptional. They have completely surpassed my expectations. The tension in Arya's stomach began to ease. Thank you. Do not thank me, Elaine retorted, closing the laptop sharply. You did the work. And so, the next major project was offered. A deep examination of legacy, of people creating things that endure. It was a 3-month assignment, beginning in January. The words registered with a strange delay in Arya's mind. She requested details. They deflected. Was she interested? Absolutely. They assured her the particulars would be sorted out later and advised her to savor a well-earned victory. Arya wandered from the studio in a daze, moving with the city's anonymous flow. Destination unknown. She found herself on a bench in Central Park, gazing into the murky surface of a pond. Then, a vibration, an encrypted text from a disposable number. Congratulations, your performance was exemplary, Monsieur Marcus. Arya stared at the screen. A different number. He had breached her digital security, just as she'd known he would. It was his signature move. She considered all the cutting replies she could send, all the boundaries she needed to establish. Instead, she chose complete silence, deleting the message and switching off her phone. That evening, she took refuge in a small Italian restaurant, the kind with checkered tablecloths and dripping wax candles. It was just her meal, and the city's vibrant life outside the window. Midway through her dinner, the waiter brought a second glass of wine, explaining it was from the gentleman at the bar. Arya turned. 3 seats away sat Luca, looking impeccable, as if he had just stepped from a magazine. Their eyes met. He offered a slight lift of his glass, a silent inquiry. Arya simply gestured to the vacant chair at her table. Luca settled his bill and crossed the room with fluid grace. "What brings you here?" she asked. "I had business in the city," he said. "I thought I would see how you were." She was not convinced. "You came all the way to New York just to check on me?" "Among other reasons," he replied, taking the seat and picking up a menu he never glanced at. "How are you?" "Like I just survived a battle," she said. "You did. Elaine chose me for the next project." "I am aware. She called me." "Of course." A faint smile touched Luca's lips. "She is impressed. That is no small feat." Arya sipped the new wine. It was far superior to what she had ordered. "So what is the actual reason you are here?" "I told you, meetings." "Luca." He paused, his gaze intensifying as if he were trying to read her soul. "I wanted to ensure you were all right," he confessed. "And I didn't want you to navigate the aftermath of that ordeal alone." A tightness formed in Arya's throat. "You didn't need to do that." "I know." They ate, their conversation flowing from the project to the city, to the peculiar intimacy that comes from capturing a stranger's essence on film. Luca shared a story of a merger that failed solely because 2 chief executive officers could not tolerate sharing a room. Arya described the moment with Maya when her professional armor cracked and a real person emerged. "That is your particular gift," Luca noted. "You perceive the things people work to conceal." "Is that meant as a compliment?" "It is an observation, but yes." After their meal, they walked, wandering without direction through the city that never rests. They were engulfed by Times Square, a sensory onslaught of artificial light and sound. "I truly despise this place," Luca admitted. "Why is that?" "It is an excessive spectacle, a stage for consumption." "But you are always on a stage," she countered. "That is different. My stage is the boardroom, a private world, not a sidewalk where faces are forgotten in 5 minutes." Arya observed him. "Does the man beneath the suit ever emerge?" Luca met her gaze directly. "You are looking at him now." The atmosphere between them suddenly shifted, charged with a profound, unspoken question that neither was courageous enough to ask. "Let us leave," Luca said, at last breaking the spell. "This place is overwhelming." They hailed a cab, and the journey back was quiet, but it was a shared, comfortable silence, not a strained one. Upon reaching her hotel, Luca escorted her to the entrance. "Thank you," Arya said, "for appearing, for everything." "Do not thank me." "It's a habit, I told you." A small smile formed on his face. Then he did something entirely unexpected, drawing her into a hug. It was not a polite, awkward gesture. It was solid, warm, and deeply grounding. Arya's body stiffened for a moment before she relaxed into it. When he drew back, his usual guarded expression had vanished. "You accomplished something monumental this week," he said. "Do not let anyone diminish that." "No one sees them." Not Elaine, not Marcus, and certainly not you. I understand. Good. With that, he vanished. Arya felt his departure, then moved toward her room, sleep a distant country she couldn't reach. Her laptop screen glowed to life, the raw images from the shoot appearing, one after another. In every face, she saw a silent narrative. In every gaze, a raw confession. For the first time in an age, Arya felt the crushing weight of her own triumph. Her phone vibrated, a familiar phantom limb. Another message from Marcus. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I am sorry for it all. You deserved so much more. Arya let the words hang in the air for a long moment. Finally, she replied, You're right. I did, and I still do. This is the last time you'll contact me. She pressed send, blocked his number, and placed the phone screen down on the table. The following morning, she was airborne, on a flight back to her life. From that altitude, the city was a quiet, manageable map. She had fled from it like cornered prey, barely escaping a snare. She returned now as a huntress, carrying her kill. Luca's car was waiting, a gesture she hadn't requested but had fully anticipated. The driver brought her home. While her apartment was unchanged, her perception of it was transformed. The woman who had left was not the one who now returned. She unpacked her things, let the hot water of a shower wash over her, and settled at her desk. A notification chimed, an email from Elaine. Arya, the final selections are in the attachment. Your name will be credited in next month's issue. This is remarkable work. We can discuss the legacy project after the holiday. Find some rest. It's been earned. Arya clicked open the file. 12 photographs stared back, each one more potent and visceral than she had remembered. She had done it. The ringing of her phone cut through the silence. It was Luca. Did you read Elaine's email? He asked. I just did. And I have no words. You don't need any, just inhabit the feeling. Arya closed her eyes, allowing the sensation to flood her system, a dizzying blend of pride, profound relief, and the electric hum of a gamble that had paid off. Thank you, she breathed. For what? For seeing what I couldn't see in myself. That is my work, Luca replied. I see the potential that people are blind to in themselves, and then I simply wait for them to see it too. Their conversation drifted, touching on future plans, the upcoming holidays, and the still festering wound of Thanksgiving with her mother. What am I supposed to do? She asked him. I think you should do whatever feels authentic, not the path of least resistance and not the act that pleases everyone else. What feels true to you? And if I don't know what that is, then you wait until you do. After they hung up, Arya sat in silence with her photos. The defiant stare of each subject met her own. She thought of Marcus, of Carolyn, and of her mother's hollow apology that still echoed with venom. She conjured the ghost of herself at that gala just a month ago, shattered, unseen, and aching for any kind of validation. That woman now felt like a total stranger. Arya opened a new email. Mom, regarding Thanksgiving, I cannot see Carolyn. Perhaps I never will, but I would like to see you. Only us. Let me know if that is something you are able to do. Arya. She sent the message before doubt could intervene. She then turned to her photo archives and lost herself in the work. It was movement. Not perfect, and certainly not painless, but it was a step in a new direction. And for the moment, that was sufficient. Her mother's response arrived 2 days later, its tone clipped and wary. I would like that. Just us. The Saturday before Thanksgiving, I can drive to you. Arya read the message 3 times over, hunting for the subtext, the hidden blade she had braced for. But the words were starkly simple, a complete, unconditional agreement. She typed her reply. Okay, Saturday at 2. The days leading up to their meeting felt stretched and distorted. Arya buried herself in her work, refining the New York photos, corresponding with Elaine, and curating a portfolio that radiated her newfound professional gravity. Luca had called twice. The conversations were light, touching on the weather, a documentary he'd seen, and Arya's new ritual of early morning runs to outpace her anxiety. That's adaptive, he noted. It's a sign of rebuilding. Or of running from something. Perhaps it's both. That doesn't diminish its value. On Friday night, Arya was seized by a cleaning frenzy, scouring her apartment for the first time in weeks. It wasn't about practicality, it was a primal need for physical action. She polished already gleaming surfaces and rearranged furniture that needed no moving. By the time she was done, it was long after midnight. Seated on her sofa, she drifted into profound quiet, uncertain of what emotion was even appropriate for the moment. Saturday dawned gray and cold. Arya made coffee, burned the toast, threw it out, and began again. She tried on 3 separate outfits before settling on jeans and a sweater that projected a casualness that was a complete lie, a thin veil over the day's immense pressure. Her mother arrived precisely at 2 o'clock. Arya observed from the window as she emerged from her car, clutching her purse like a shield. She appeared smaller, older, and exhausted in a way that sleep could not mend. Arya pulled the door open before her mother had a chance to knock. "Hey, Mom." "Hi, darling." The silence that stretched between them felt solid, a tangible thing. Her mother finally broke the stillness, closing the gap with a brief, tentative hug, as if seeking permission. Arya mirrored the gesture, an act that felt at once instinctive and utterly strange. "Please come in," Arya offered. Her mother stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the apartment with a peculiar intensity, despite having seen it countless times. "It looks different. Better. I just rearranged a few things. It works. It feels much larger." They took seats at the small kitchen table. Arya, needing something to do with her hands, had made tea and now poured 2 mugs that would likely go cold. "I'm glad you came," Arya began. "I'm glad you asked me." Her mother cradled the mug, her eyes fixed on its contents as if divining the future. "I wasn't certain you would really be here." I wasn't certain either. A quiet settled over them, not comfortable, not hostile, just empty. "So, how have you been?" her mom asked at last. "Busy. I was in New York for a magazine project." "I know. Your father discovered an article about it online. He showed me." Arya had to let that sink in. "My dad. He is incredibly proud of you. He's just terrible at showing it, but believe me, it is genuine." That piece of information patched a hole in her heart she hadn't known was there. Arya looked into her tea. "I had no idea." "I should have told you long ago. We both should have." Her mom inhaled sharply. "Arya, I owe you a true apology. Nothing like that phone call. Do you understand? I failed you. When you needed me to be your advocate, to stand with you, I chose to preserve a false family harmony instead. I convinced myself I was holding us together, but the truth is I was avoiding a conflict that was necessary. And you were the one who paid the price for my own cowardice." A knot formed in Arya's throat, stealing her ability to speak. I've spent this last month trying to understand how I allowed that to happen, her mom went on. How I could watch my own child suffer and do nothing. The honest answer is, I was afraid. Afraid of what it meant to concede that Caroline did something unforgivable, scared of losing her and terrified of losing you. So I became paralyzed, and that is not an excuse. It is not nearly enough. No, Arya managed to say, her voice a fractured whisper. It isn't. I am aware of that, and I have no expectation of your forgiveness. Not now, and maybe not ever. But it's vital you know that I see it now. What I did, and what I failed to do. And I am profoundly, deeply sorry. Arya wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, surprised by the moisture she found there. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Because I couldn't see it clearly myself. I was consumed with fixing everything, with forcing you two to reconcile, to rewind to how things used to be. But you cannot go back, and you should never have to. That entire situation revealed something I had refused to acknowledge. What was that? That I effectively taught Caroline that she was immune to consequences because I was always there to mitigate the damage. That I taught you that your own feelings were inconsequential because I never prioritized them. That I engineered a family dynamic where the loudest, most volatile person commanded all the attention. Her mother's voice finally cracked. I built that system, and now it's mine to dismantle. Arya could only stare at her mother. This was not the confrontation she had rehearsed. She had anticipated justifications, deflections, the familiar pattern of blame and denial. Not this raw, unsparing ownership. What is the situation with Caroline? Arya asked. A subtle tension entered her mother's face. What of her? Have you spoken to her about any of this? I have. She is not handling it well. Good. The barest trace of a smile touched her mother's lips. She's still maintaining it wasn't her fault, that it was unintentional, that she never meant to cause you pain. And yet, she did the one thing she shouldn't have. Yes, she did. Her mom put her mug down, a gesture of finality. I explained to her that my days of refereeing between you are over. Any possibility of reconciliation is now her responsibility to pursue. I told her I would not pressure you to forgive her simply to make holiday gatherings less uncomfortable. A great, tangled mass of anxiety that Arya had carried for weeks began to loosen its grip inside her chest. You really said that to her? I did. She was furious, but that is her burden to carry, not yours. They allowed that new reality to settle in the space between them. Outside, a car alarm shrieked and a voice shouted. The city's chaotic symphony, a stark counterpoint to the fragile armistice being signed within the apartment. I'm not sure forgiveness is possible for her, Arya confessed. Or for you. Not now, anyway. I understand, but I hope we can begin when you're ready, with her. That's a different story. Her mother gave a small, accepting nod. That's fair. It's more than I deserve. There's one condition, though, a new rule. And what's that? This never happens again. The next time Carolyn or anyone else comes for me, I need you in my corner, unconditionally. Not the family's, not the side of keeping a false peace. My side. You have my word. Promises are cheap, Mom. I know, so don't listen to my words, watch my actions. For the first time, Arya felt a glimmer of belief, or maybe just the will to believe. For now, it was enough. They spoke for another hour about the simple things, her job, her mom's book club, the porch light her father had finally repaired after a 2-year campaign of nagging. They talked about ordinary things, the way they used to before the world blew apart. When her mother finally rose to leave, the embrace they shared was steadier, longer. "I love you," her mother whispered. "I love you too." Nothing was repaired, but the ground was consecrated for a new beginning. After the lock clicked, Arya sank into the sofa, letting the waves of emotion wash over her. The sorrow, the catharsis, the fragile, illogical hope that something so utterly shattered could somehow be reassembled. Her phone vibrated. A message from Luca. "How did it go?" "Better than I dared to imagine, and harder than I was prepared for." "That sounds about right." She apologized. "A real one this time." "Good! You were owed that?" "I have no idea what comes next." "You don't need to know right now." A faint smile touched Arya's lips as she read his message. She replied, "Are you available tomorrow?" "That's a loaded question. For what?" "I need to show you something." A brief delay, then his response. "All right. Where?" "It's a surprise." "I despise surprises. You'll like this one." The following day was Sunday. Arya collected Luca at noon in the worn-out sedan inherited from her dad, a car she rarely used. As he settled in, his gaze drifted over the clutter on the floor and the fractured dashboard, one eyebrow arching in question. "This is your vehicle." "Reserve judgment." "I'm not judging, I'm merely observing." "It's the same thing." "Not in the slightest." They drove beyond the city limits, into a landscape so different it felt alien, though it was merely 40 minutes away. Here there were rolling hills, patchwork farms, and roads that snaked without purpose, seemingly for pure aesthetic. "Where are we headed?" Luca finally asked. "You'll see." "You're aware I detest being kept in the dark." "I'm aware. That's precisely the point." The barest trace of a smile flickered across his face. "You're finding this amusing?" "Far more than I probably should." They continued until the navigation system announced their arrival. Arya pulled onto a gravel lot beside an old barn, converted into what looked like a gallery. A rustic hand-painted sign read, "Westfield Art Collective." Luca studied it, then turned his gaze on Arya. "What is this place?" "Somewhere I used to exist, before my life became complicated, before Marcus, before the move to New York, before I lost track of why I ever held a camera at all." She slipped out of the driver's side, and Luca did the same. The barn's interior air was a mix of wood dust, turpentine, and brewed coffee. Its walls were a chaotic tapestry of local creations, canvases, sculptures, photographs in mismatched frames. A woman in her 60s sat at a desk in the corner, absorbed in a worn paperback. She glanced up and her features split into a wide, familiar grin. "Well, would you look at what crawled back? You finally remembered your roots." "Hey, Ruth." Ruth rose, pulling Arya into an embrace that smelled of lavender and faint cigarette smoke. "Been too long, kiddo. I was beginning to worry you'd gone all big shot on us." "Not quite. Only New York." "Same thing." Ruth's focus then shifted to Luca, assessing him with the raw honesty only the very old or very young can wield. "And who is this?" "This is Luca. Luca, this is Ruth. She's the one who taught me the fundamentals of this craft." "And you've clearly forgotten half of them," Ruth countered, her grin softening the jab. She extended a hand, which Luca took. "A pleasure," he said. "The jury's still out on that." Ruth gestured deeper into the barn. "Did Arya bother to explain the sanctuary to you?" "Not in any detail." "Sounds like her. Never could accept praise." Ruth glanced at Arya. "Your old pieces are still hanging in the back. Couldn't bring myself to move them. People still ask about them." "Really?" "Really? Come on. I'll show your sophisticated new companion the work you did before you decided to play in the major leagues." They followed Ruth toward the rear of the barn. And there, on a weathered section of wall, were 6 of Arya's portraits from 3 years ago. Black and white images of town locals, a farmer, a waitress, a mechanic. Faces one might typically overlook, captured in moments of unguarded, potent truth. Luca just stood there, his silence a testament of profound respect. "This is powerful," he said at last. "It's early work." "The power hasn't faded," Ruth just scoffed. Told her as much, but would she listen? Too preoccupied with chasing that metropolitan prestige. "I wasn't chasing anything," Arya muttered. "Sure you weren't." Ruth patted her arm. "It's good to have you back, kid, even if this is only a layover." She turned, heading back to her desk and leaving them alone with the echoes of who Arya used to be. The barn was silent save for the creak of old timber and the whisper of the wind. "So, what was the real reason you brought me to this middle of nowhere?" Luca finally asked. "I needed you to see the starting point before I manufactured this other persona. Back when my only purpose was to truly see people. And you don't do that anymore." "I got lost, distracted by Marcus, by trying to belong in his world, by the lie that I had to become someone else to be valuable." "And yet, you found your way back here?" "I'm trying." Luca turned to face her directly. "Do you want to know why I'm actually helping you? Why I appeared at that gala? Why I arranged the meeting with Elaine? Why I still answer your calls?" Arya could only shake her head. "Because the day we met, you were the mirror image of something I had already lost." The most honest art, the work that cuts to the bone, comes from those whose souls are still intact, or from those piecing the fragments back together. He gestured at the photos. "This is your core, not the socialite persona, not the media's creation. This, the gift of seeing the unseen and making them immortal." A knot formed in Arya's throat. "I don't know if I can be that person and still succeed by the world's standards." "That's a flawed perspective. You have to stop viewing them as separate battles." An hour later, they left. Ruth made Arya vow to return with new work and made Luca promise he wouldn't try to alter her. "The thought is preposterous," Luca had said. "Good, because I'm capable of finding out where you reside." "That is factually inaccurate." "Give me 5 minutes and a telephone directory." The return journey was swathed in a comfortable silence. The sun descended, streaking the sky in hues of orange, purple, and gold. "Thank you," Luca said, breaking the quiet. "For what?" "For allowing me to see that. Most people conceal their origins from me. They present only the polished version they aspire to be. So perhaps they assume you wouldn't understand." "Perhaps. Or perhaps they fear I'll see the very thing they're trying to escape." "Are you seeing something now?" Luca's eyes swept over her. "Yes, I'm seeing an artist who is stronger than she realizes, and whose return will be legendary. Arya's knuckles turned white around the steering wheel. She couldn't summon a single word in response. They drove the rest of the way in silence until the city skyline emerged. After leaving him at his apartment building, she watched him disappear inside, then sat for a moment before driving away. Thanksgiving passed quietly. Arya spent it with her father, just the two of them, eating Chinese takeout while a generic sports game flickered on the television. He didn't bring up Caroline or Marcus, only told her he was proud, and she felt the truth in it. It was sufficient. The subsequent weeks became a blur of work, training, and strained conversations with her mother, arguments that resolved little but kept tensions from escalating. Texts from Luca were infrequent but arrived precisely when she neared her breaking point. 2 weeks shy of Christmas, a call came from a private number. She nearly declined it, but a strange instinct compelled her to answer. Hello? Arya, it's Caroline. A shock of cold dread coursed through her. The logical move was to disconnect, block the number, and erase the moment. But she remained on the line. What do you want? Caroline's voice was thin, unsteady. I needed to hear your voice. I know you have no desire to speak to me. I know you must despise me. But I felt I had to try. Try what? To say I am sorry. I realize I said it before, but I don't believe I understood its meaning or the gravity of what I had taken from you. Arya pressed her eyes shut. Caroline, Marcus, and I are finished. A profound silence hung in the air. When? Arya asked. Last week. It wasn't right. It was never going to be right. We both understood that. We were just unwilling to accept that we had destroyed everything for absolutely nothing. Arya had anticipated a sense of victory, but all she felt was a deep weariness. I'm sorry to hear that, she said, and was surprised to find she meant it. You don't need to be. You were correct about all of it. I was selfish. I was cruel, and I convinced myself it was love to justify my actions. But it was never love. It was a terror of being alone, and I chose the easiest path, despite the fact that it shattered you. Yes, that's a fairly accurate assessment. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. Forgiving myself feels impossible, but I needed to say I finally understand my actions, and the loathing is overwhelming. Arya perched on the bed's edge. What is it you need, Carolyn? Nothing. I want nothing from you. I just had to tell you. Understood. I hear you. And you. Are you all right? My mother mentioned you found work in New York. I'm managing. Good. That's really good. You've earned that. A profound, aching silence filled the space between them. Caroline's voice then fractured. I miss you? A pure shard of sorrow pierced Arya's heart. I miss you as well. But that fact alters nothing. I realize that. Maybe one day, just not yet. I understand. With a trembling inhale, Caroline spoke. Thank you for not disconnecting. Of course. The connection ended. Arya remained seated, gazing into space, absorbing the full gravity of it all. This wasn't resolution. It wasn't absolution. It was merely an acknowledgement of the truth. For now, perhaps that was enough. She sent a text to Luca. Caroline reached out, and I allowed her to say her piece. Then I explained I'm not prepared to forgive her. How does that leave you? Barren, lighter, yet hollow. I can't tell. That's a common feeling, truly. Yes, the path to healing is never direct. At times, it's simply being profoundly lost. A faint, strange smile touched Arya's lips. When did you become so philosophical? That insight was always present. You're only now beginning to perceive it. Christmas passed as a non-occasion. Arya chose solitude, not for lack of company. She was exercising phantoms, searing her vision on the screen while battling the legacy project. Caught in that fractured state between shattered and healing. Then, on New Year's Eve, the silence was broken by her phone. It was Luca. "What are your plans tonight?" "None. And the reason for that, you ought to have plans. I'm fine without them." "Arya." "Luca." A sigh echoed over the line. "There's a quiet gathering, only a handful of us. You should come by." "I don't do parties. It's not a party. It's dinner. With people who demand no performance, who won't pry into your life. Who are they? Friends? Genuine ones? The type who witnessed my lowest point and never left." A weighty pause hung between them before her reply. "All right," she relented, "but if I feel trapped, I'm leaving." Agreed. The location was in a section of the city she had never explored. Upon her arrival, Luca was deep in conversation with 5 others, 2 men, 3 women, his contemporaries, sharing laughter that spoke of long-standing bonds. Luca rose as he spotted her. "You came." "I kept my word." He recited the names at the table, which she immediately forgot, though their faces stayed with her. Unguarded, open, the kind who pose real questions and patiently await a response. They dined. They spoke of careers, of the city, of the particular dread that accompanies the dawn of a new year. No one probed for Arya's history, not a single soul pried. They simply created a space for her as if she had always belonged. Later, over dessert, a woman, perhaps Sarah or Sophie, leaned toward her. "Luca talks about you non-stop." Arya's gaze snapped up. "He does." "Incessantly, your creative brilliance, your incredible skill. You realize he doesn't do that, right? For anyone. You must be quite important." Arya glanced at Luca, who was lost in a passionate debate, his hands punctuating his words. "I wouldn't say important," Arya murmured. "Well, he thinks so, so you should accept it." As midnight approached, they spilled onto the street where a bottle of champagne was opened. They recited the final seconds, a strange assembly of friends and newcomers. And as the year turned, Arya felt a subtle shift. Not a resolution, not a conclusion, but a change. Afterward, Luca escorted her to her car. "I appreciate you coming," he said. "Thanks for having me." "They were quite taken with you." "How could you know that?" "Because Sarah inquired if you were single, and when I said I didn't know, she instructed me to find out." A flutter, a skip in her pulse. "And is that what you're attempting to do now?" Luca met her gaze, his expression both a question and a statement. "I'm not certain, Arya," he said softly. "Are you prepared for me?" She considered it, the inferno she'd walked through, the woman she was becoming, and how, for the first time, she wasn't looking for another's validation. "Pose that question again in a couple of months," she retorted. A slow smile formed on Luca's face. "Consider it done. I will." He drew her into an embrace. She returned it. When they separated, the energy between them had transformed. Nothing was resolved, but an unspoken truth now lay between them. She navigated the empty streets home, fireworks scarring the night sky. Her thoughts turned to Marcus, Caroline, her parents, the architects of the person she had to dismantle to find herself. She thought of Luca, Ruth, and the New York women who bared their souls for her lens. She understood healing wasn't linear, that rage still greeted some mornings. that she mourned the girl ignorant of betrayal. But mostly she knew she had endured, had entered a space designed to diminish her and emerged stronger, had converted the ugliest chapter of her life into propulsion instead of being consumed by its fire. 3 months on, Elaine called. "The feature goes to print next week. I'm forwarding an advance copy. Thank you." "Don't thank me. This was your achievement. You've earned all of it." The magazine arrived 2 days later. Arya opened it with caution, as if a sudden move might make it disappear. And there they were, across 12 glossy pages, the women she'd captured looking vulnerable, authentic, and strong. At the bottom of page 1, in small, perfect type, "Photography by Arya Vale." She stared until the words blurred. Then she picked up her phone to call Luca. "It's here. I know, I'm holding my copy. And it's everything I knew it would be. I couldn't have managed this without you." "Incorrect. You absolutely could have. It merely would have taken more time." A genuine laugh escaped her. "You are maddening." "So I'm told, but I'm serious. Thank you." "You're welcome. Now cease thanking me and go commemorate this, Arya." "How?" "However you see fit. This victory is yours. Claim it." Arya ended the call. She regarded the magazine for a long while. Then she got into her car and drove to her mother's. When her mom answered the door, her gaze fell to the magazine in Arya's hand, and she began to weep. "I am just so immensely proud of you," she sobbed. "I know," Arya replied. They stood in silence for a moment before her mother guided her inside. That evening, Arya shared a single photo online. Not for attention, she reasoned, but as evidence of a soul rebuilding. The responses poured in, including one from the man who began it all, Marcus. His comment, "I regret that I couldn't see it," only confirmed how invisible she had been to him. Arya allowed her gaze to linger on his words for a moment before deleting them without a response. That action was a definitive schism, the final act that liberated her from victimhood. Her narrative was different now. Some losses are the steep cost of self-discovery. 6 months later, Arya was in a Brooklyn gallery attending her own exhibition. The collection, titled The Legacy Project, had evolved into her first full solo show. Her name was displayed at the wall in bold letters. Luca was beside her, studying a photograph. "You accomplished it," he said. "We accomplished it," she countered. He immediately dismissed that. "No, you did this. I simply propped the door open," he insisted, casting himself as a supporting player. Arya turned to him, reversing their dynamic. "Are you ready for my response now?" she asked, referring to the question from New Year's. He became perfectly still. "Are you?" she answered. "I believe so," then amended her statement. "I'm ready to try if you are as well." The composed smile Luca always maintained fractured into something genuine, a vulnerability that drew them closer. "Yes," he exhaled. "I am ready." He reached for her hand, and she allowed him to hold it. In that space, Arya felt a profound sense of correctness, an instinct she knew originated from within her, not from him. For 6 weeks, the exhibition was a triumph, earning glowing reviews and attracting collectors. There was even discussion of a book. Caroline, another specter of her past, sent flowers, which Arya simply placed on a table and allowed to wilt. It served as a quiet monument to her newfound strength, the capacity to observe beauty, and its inevitable decline with a perfectly serene and clear perspective. Her parents attended the opening, standing together in quiet, unwavering pride before her art. On the show's final evening, she stood alone in the silent gallery, assessing her own spirit. She contemplated the woman she once was, entirely reliant on others' opinions, defined by a single act of deceit. That version of her was gone, supplanted by someone far more resilient. Not perfect, but a woman who finally grasped that a complete disaster is not the end of the narrative. It was, in truth, the beginning of an entirely new volume. Arya extinguished the lights and stepped into the night, liberated at last from the fear of what the darkness might hold. She had finally deciphered her own pain. You don't overcome trauma by denying it. You overcome it by becoming someone it can no longer wound. Arya now considered herself beyond its reach, not because her heart had turned to stone, but because she understood her worth was no longer a subject for debate. That single shift, she knew, had made all the difference.